All right. So,
Sorry.
what's up, Greg?
Oh, I was gonna say I apologize. I look like a ghost, but I'm a real person. It's just the way my camera hits my
The
phone.
light, yeah.
I don't have any hair to saturate that light.
Hi, everybody, and welcome. Congrats on making it to the end here of the end of the open course. Been hopefully it's been an exciting 8 weeks for you all. It certainly has been for us. And without further ado, want to just share high level. We're just gonna see how people are doing, talk some preliminary numbers for the course, quickly run through the modules just for us to share any feedback or reflections we've had in moderating them. You all are welcome to share thoughts and feedback you have as we go through. Then we'll have a decent chunk of time set aside for you all to share and engage and reflect for us, and then wrap up with a few reminders and resources. But we truly want this to be collaborative and informative. You know, for anyone who's been following along and seen some of our past work, we take student feedback, participant feedback very seriously and make lots of big changes to the course based on that. So don't be shy in offering your thoughts, both affirmative as well as critical. We welcome it all. So first, just wanted to see how everybody's doing, both course related and uncourse related. We as the instructors had logged on early and we're talking about the state of things. Greg with his pediatric appointment. Megan was at a marathon dance competition all weekend for kids. So feel free to use the chat or feel free to use any of the reaction icons, indicate how you're doing. And as you think about that, I just wanted to share some high-level preliminary numbers. The course says we have 1,053 people, but I already did a check for unique people, and there were 10 or so that were either duplicates or erroneous. So our final enrollment is 1,043, which is pretty awesome. I always make sure and reiterate that every couple posts in module 1 to really encourage the folks that are signed up in the course to take advantage of that and look to engage with one another, because it's a big community of people every year that take this course, and this year is no exception. And we don't know completion numbers just yet. I mean, some people have definitely completed, earned their badges. A lot of it is on me because I'm the one that grades the written assignments, and a lot of folks tend to submit those last. And so I grade those as they come in, as I'm able, but there's hundreds of submissions. So I'm working my way through that, but I'm fairly caught up. But I know I looked this morning and saw there's a handful that I haven't gotten to, but because of that, rest assured, we pull, and I'll go to the next slide. We pull everything at the end. So even if something isn't registering or you're not getting prompted within the course that you've earned your badge or you haven't received an email, when the course is over and all the grading is done, I go through and download. Well, obviously I have all the grades, but then I download the badges just to make sure that all badges that should have been awarded are awarded. And so if need be, I manually create and push those out to folks using the email that you signed up for the course with. So if you feel like you've earned the badge, but you have not received it or it hasn't popped up in the course, don't worry. In the end, I always kind of pull that info and make sure and share it for folks. Okay, any questions about any of that before we go into module reflection? A lot of folks congratulating Jeanette. Good job, Jeanette. Okay, cool. So, Megan, do you want to, well, I guess we all can share on module one, but any reflection from folks on module one? I at least I'll kick off the reflection to say that I think I love the module one discussion board. I think it's really exciting. I was just telling the other instructors, it's finally stopping in terms of posts because we finally, enrollment finally got cut off on Friday. But it's a steady stream of people joining the course and saying hello. So it's something that is pretty exciting for us to see people joining along the way. And so that's what I always think about with module one, is just the steady stream of people coming in and getting a chance to say hello, and especially make connections of functional areas with kind of critical mass of people or multiple people from a given course or a given institution signing up and encouraging them to work with one another.
Yeah, I would add, Joe, that Sandra just mentioned in the chat the definitions, and I saw that referenced quite a bit, differentiation between those three terms that are often used interchangeably, but have a really different purpose. So I think that's always helpful, and I'm glad people thought that was valuable to get some of that shared language. Sorry about my cat here.
Yeah, I just thought that was like one of the last comments I made on the discussion 8 discussion board, where there were two people that were talking about the assessment, evaluation, and research, and appreciating the differentiation between them, of which I reminded them that there are multiple schools of thought here. And so we were presenting some of those schools of thought and trying to land on a common definition for the purpose of the course. But as we say in the video and resources here, like, make sure to check your local definitions and understandings, because just because other people operate one way, if that's not how your institution rolls, you need to make sure you're operating within their definitions, even if you want to make changes anywhere. Okay. Megan, module 2.
All right, so module 2, I was starting to read the final discussion boards, and quite a few folks mentioned the steps, outlining the steps to be helpful in a very concrete way of how to even get started in some of this work. If I'm recalling correctly, seems like most of the responses were focused on either the very beginning of the steps, which is really defining the purpose, which is often rushed through or really maybe assumed. People talking about how they needed to spend some more time there with their stakeholders to really be clear in order to get the outcomes that they are really wanting with an assessment project. And then a lot of folks also talking about the very end of the process, which is sharing and using the information to inform change, and how sometimes the experience has been collecting a lot of information and then not doing a lot with it. So I always think module 2 is really helpful because I'm a very structured person. I mentioned that in the videos. So for me to have an outline of how to approach the work, even though it does, it doesn't always go completely linear. You have to adapt to your context and to your circumstances. But yeah, that seemed to provoke some good interaction in the institutional type discussion boards there. So thanks for everyone weighing in.
and I put it in the chat, but I will say there were a lot of call outs in the module 3 writing assignment of people saying how they'd use the 11 steps to guide their approach and guide their conversations, as well as the checklist that was the project checklist that was provided. People appreciated that. Which I'll just segue to that module 3. You know, I'm excited that this module got some more shout outs and notes of appreciation. Not, you know, for ego purposes, but just in terms of, I felt like more than ever this year's participants and the content for this module, folks really identified with and said it was eye-opening for them to, you know, to have that perspective beyond just how to do assessment, but how to help others do assessment. And in a lot of ways that helps you, right? I mean, if you're able to give feedback and critique other people's assessment approach, you can do that for yourself. And so it was pretty cool to see a bit more of a positive, affirming tone here. Not that it wasn't positive in the past, but I think people just took it for what it was, whereas this year it resonated a bit more with folks. So that got me excited because I feel like this is a space that unfortunately, given staffing realities and that assessment people, if you have one, are stretched very thin. And so the more that we can even have peers coaching peers is great, and is only going to help the institution and help the assessment people, because sometimes it is difficult when you're the only one sort of advocating for certain concepts of good assessment practice. It's nice then when they hear it from a faculty member or hear it from a staff member, instead of just, of course, Joe's back on his soapbox, but instead to hear it from a resounding group of folks. All right, Greg, you're up.
I mean, everything that this module did, it seemed to rely as a foundation. So it makes sense for it to come here, because this is where kind of the work in internal, what I read, a lot of people thinking about this internal to their units, or where they're working and how where misalignments are, what their vision versus the organization's vision or the unit vision looks like. So it was truly felt like this was a great kind of entry into, okay, what do we do now? Where do we go with this? And I didn't hear as many call outs to other modules, but I think all what I saw were the other modules in the actual assessment kind of questions, right? So how they went through the discussion was really great to see, how they built upon the prior modules. Yeah, I think I'm excited to see what people think when they do a review of this course, or when they kind of edit to see where changes can be made. I think that will be kind of a nice step. This is my first time teaching this one. Other thoughts? Way out there?
Ooh, and that's an ugly link, sorry. But I did also want to plug that if you all are not webinared out, we have a session tomorrow with APHIS, who's our course partner, and the session's called Aligning Assessment with Institutional Priorities. So very much complementing Module 4, but we have a handful of perspectives from different institutions that are going to be there, and the session is being recorded. So if you can't make it at the time, that's fine. You can still check it out, and they record those and post them within APHIS Academy, which is free to join. So I want to make sure and mention that. Yeah,
that would be really good for folks who think that who are in roles where they think about how they can actually align, make the argument for their units or for a unit overall, how it fits into the organizational structure, the university structure. So we're getting some cool comments on Module 4, which is good to hear. I'm really glad to hear those things. I think, going back to this, it's really the prior modules kind of give you the outline of what to do. And then this is the first foray into actually kind of, how does this fit my life? Where am I going? What am I doing right now? And how do I make the changes or craft the plan that I need to craft, connecting it to my current environment? So that's what I like about the kind of practical nature of this. I'm also glad there are good resources available. I love visuals, so glad to hear that the links were good. Can you go on, Joe?
All right. So module 5, so this one, in contrast to module 3, I think this is why I thought module 3 deserved a little more kudos this year, or was excited to see it, is module 5 has been really was a fan favorite last year and is still one again this year. I think we did a good job over the, one of the things we got a lot of feedback on from participants last year was that they wished, we develop a whole course on module 5 or have way more content. And while, that's a great idea, we're trying to keep this still as almost like a survey course with many elements of assessment. But one of the things we did very intentionally do, and I know Greg and Megan did a good job of this, is we did more intentionally add in and call out equity applications to other modules throughout the course. And I feel like that has resonated in a way that while there's still people who love module 5, I think we've so far gotten less feedback of, wanting to see this more in, through the lens of some of the other content of the course. So I feel like, that's a good pat on our backs for some course changes between last year and this year. But I'm really glad that this, content still resonates with people and they found it important. And it also was eye-opening for a lot of folks. And that's a good thing because there's, plenty of people that, haven't thought through this or don't know how to do it. So we're hoping that the resources and a lot of folks said the assignment was helpful for them putting this in practice. Hoping that folks take this, what resonates with them and takes back their institution and have some tools to equip them so that they have some resources to point to in some potentially difficult conversations.
Yeah, speaking of that, tools, we lead right into module 6, talking about putting things into practice. What are the data that we need? One of the things I'm really happy about this is that we added a lot of resources around qualitative work and quantitative work. So that talking about the importance of data being everywhere. It's all around us. It's important to us. It's not one or the other. It's both and in a lot of ways. And so closing the loop is about telling that story, crafting what's happening, and giving it to other people in very digestible ways. And that's really important when you want to talk about, resourcing, or I saw lots of people who had used data in the discussion for resourcing, justifying why they need more people or why they should adjust during COVID, why they should adjust schedules to be more responsive to students. And that's a lot of our work. Sometimes there's a business case to assessment. And I think sometimes we need to call that out distinctively and say there's a business case to this work of resourcing work. And then there's the student development, student efficacy, social emotional learning, as we call in the K-12 space, part of assessment, that this helps students learn and engage. And both of those require quantitative and qualitative data. And I really like that people were showing where both of those areas were put into practice. So there were lots of discussions about qualitative data and a lot of discussions about quantitative data as well. So that was really exciting for me to see. And hopefully the resources there from both Excel, I hope that those were all really helpful to kind of develop that you don't need to be. I think a lot of people are afraid of quantitative data because they get math fear, equation fear, and hopefully this helped show that you don't need to be statistician or anything like that to really understand data and what's going on.
Well, Module 7's my favorite. I could talk about building culture of assessment all day long, and reading your reflections on your interview conversations was so fun for me. And I was happy to hear that some of you talked to someone that you never would have or had been wanting to connect with and are thinking of all these new collaborations and have a kind of another partner in crime, someone else that cares about assessment. So I just loved reading this discussion board so much. The other things that I just get really excited to hear is, all the ideas for what you're going to do within your department, within your division. And I know it's cheesy, but I like to think of planting these seeds and how, the more that we do the course and the more people kind of get in this assessment mindset with a spirit of inquiry, that it just kind of keeps growing. And I am hoping that eventually, it's just infused in all of the work that we do in student affairs or, on the broader campus. So yeah, this is one of my favorite things. And you all just brought such great additional, we asked for you to say, was there an additional C that you wanted to add? And lots of great ideas. I think the most common were change, curiosity, were two of the C's. So, and context, which I thought was a great one too, like understanding, kind of goes to module 4, but sort of the broader institutional environment and conditions you're working under. So thanks for engaging on that one, y'all.
Megan, not to put you on the spot, but was there any talk of culture around culture collapse? And because that was something that I don't know if it was module 8 or somewhere, but I was talking with some other participants about the fact that I've been at a couple institutions, and what I thought were healthy, thriving, efficient cultures while I was there, and then I moved on, then just completely fell apart, like within 1 to 2 years. And cultures should not be dependent on a single person to keep them running. So clearly they weren't as healthy as I thought they were. But yeah, I'd be curious, because I didn't look through all those responses. I'd be curious if people talked about that.
Yeah, there were a handful, and I was reading both 7 and 8 over the weekend, so I also don't remember where that exactly landed. But I thought that was some really insightful and honest, candid conversation around, man, I put all this effort in, and I thought that had other folks bought into doing assessment. We put some structures in place, did some of the things in the 4 C's, and then it still felt like it was built up around one leader or one staff member. So yeah, I think that, to me, the challenge on a number of levels, I've seen that institutionally, not just with assessment work, but with a lot of initiatives. But to me, that speaks to that C around commitment, where the senior leadership really has to be bought in and championing this work, or else, if they're not. Folks talked about how it was like, okay, just go do assessment, get it done. So you kind of have the permission, but you don't really have the enthusiasm or the excitement for the work, or the, this is really important for our culture, for improvement. It's more about, let's just check the boxes and say we did it, and we'll have some reports to submit when someone asks us for something, rather than we're really taking this seriously and we're really going to use it to inform change. So yeah, I don't know, someone said we should do a session on that, or a conference roundtable or something, for even more ideas than what was presented here about how to make sure that it's sustained beyond a single individual. Yeah, I see that at my campus now. I came in new and there was a gap between me and the former person, and nothing really progressed in the time, in that 6 or 7 or 8 months that there was a gap there. And luckily he had left a pretty, he had left a lot of information for me and was willing to connect so I could pick up a lot of the work. But, it was hard to see that not a lot of folks had kind of picked it up and kept it going without someone pushing. Thanks for bringing that up, Joe.
That's such a valuable point, Megan and Joe. I think, and it's not unique to higher ed. We're talking in my own organization. We're talking about how do we become places where ideas go to live instead of die. And I think it's the same with assessment. How do we become campuses or cultures where assessment goes to live? And so I think that's something that's really powerful across that we're dealing with in lots of organizations, right?
Yeah, I think it's oh, bye Modena. I think you're right, Greg, and that live and die metaphor is also important, and I think it speaks to as well, like assessment, like other things, they need life and they need tending to, right? They need attention and care. I think as soon as we put something on autopilot or feel like we've quote unquote done enough, or set it and forget it, like it will be forgotten. and people then will only do the bare minimum of what they think they need to do. And so, how do we keep breathing life and sustaining something? And I think some of that comes, back to module 4, I think it comes with making sure that we're situating assessment as an institutional priority and not having this as siloed, separate individual work. And yeah, and keeping folks realizing that there's always more we can be doing to better serve. Our students are never perfectly served. Our students are never learning and succeeding as well as they can be. Fact, right? And so the sooner people accept that and understand that, not as a defeatist mentality, but instead as a challenge of how can we be rising to this challenge to best serve our students? What can we be continually doing to best serve our students? Then that's where we can get to this better place. But I think until we do, it's hard.
Yeah, Joe, I think you are really articulating that tension that exists of that. It's not that we aren't doing a good job, it's that also students change and we have to adapt and change with our students. Just like I always go back to water flows where it's easiest to flow, and and thereby change banks of rivers, right? So if you go to a bank of a river and all of a sudden you expect it to be in the same spot, it might shift. And so if you plan on it always being in that same spot, then it's you're misplanning, you're misaligning where your bank of your river will be. And so it's so important that we change with our students, that we assess, because our students are adapting and our assessments need to adapt and then inform how we adapt as an institution to help students.
Well said, Greg. So we're in module 8, so we can't talk too much about it, other than love seeing the posts on the discussion board already, and we'll all be digging in and responding there, so keep that coming. But yeah, this it's really a culminating piece of trying to bring everything together and think about how you're going to use this as you go forward. So we've talked a lot. we want to turn the tables a bit and really dedicate a good chunk of time to you all, for the folks that are here, to share and give us some feedback about the course, your experience, things that we can improve on, ideas you have. We'd love to hear anything you have to say. So we'll stop talking to give you all the chance to either chat ideas or take yourself off mute and share your thoughts.
I mean, you don't want Joe and and Megan to talk about sports or the Cal State system moving away from remediation.
Well, one question that I'll pose. Oh, go ahead, James. Go for it.
Hi, I just wanted to say the enhancements you made with, was it like the little checkbox feature, just to check mark, hey, have we completed certain tasks each week? That additional feature I think really helped me, because when I'm doing this course, like probably everybody else, I'm trying to balance my 8 to 5 job, as well as sometimes bleeding into 6 o'clock, and then trying to balance this on top of my professional development. So being able to go back into this course after about 6 or 7 days to realize, where did I leave off at? That checkbox was amazing. So I just wanted to say that progress tracker was perfect. And also for a newbie like myself, I like the reflective pieces. I've worked in higher education now for about 10 years. I've always wanted to see what assessment was like. And just to know that my practices with success coaching, with advising, just with mentoring students, you can use some of those basic practices with assessment, because you're kind of teaching the next generation of higher ed professionals of tomorrow if you're doing these assessment practices. So it's just like that mentorship process. And so I think everything that you guys done so far has been great.
Thank you so much for the feedback on the checkboxes. For those who may not know, that was actually at our mid-course live session. That was a suggestion from somebody. Somebody said, like, oh, it'd be really cool if you could figure out a way to do this. And I looked into it and found a way, but I didn't know, is this going to be helpful? Is this going to be confusing? So glad that it, at least for some people, was helpful. So awesome. And thanks too for your reflection and insights. Absolutely. I think first of all, I hope a lot of people walk away, if they're new to assessment, in thinking about, like, I'm already doing some of this, right? And the more you understand about assessment, the more you're gonna be like, oh, I already do this stuff. I just don't maybe have a formal plan, or I'm not, crunching hard numbers behind this, but I am taking the temperature of my students, and I am sharing this feedback with my colleagues. So thanks so much.
I want to add to that, to say that I was in that last session, and I sincerely don't think it was me, but I was part of that conversation. And I really appreciated, this was exactly what we all were asking for. So this really did what we had asked. And I want to double down on what James just said about how I'm not in an administrator role at all. And I had asked one of my peer colleagues to join this class so that I could do what you all recommended, which was like talk about the class with them. And they had the feedback of, well, this is what I learned in grad school. And my retort was, are we using any of it? Like, yes, we learned it in grad school, but we haven't actually practiced it. So I wanted to say that, yes, this is all the stuff I learned in grad school, and it's presented in a way that helps me remember that I actually do know this, so that I can then actually learn it this time and actually retain it this time. So all the material was really presented in an accessible way to remind me that I actually do know how to do this.
Yeah, I think the thing about grad school from my own experience is I learned some pieces here and there of it, but I don't think I went to grad school right after undergrad, right? So I was doing some graduate assistantship practicum type things, but I don't think it was actually till I was working full time and kind of saw the full cycle of a certain area or a department, that I could really conceptualize how it would play out and I would actually be doing it. So it's like kind of the, like you were saying, the theoretical was there, but I needed some work experience to actually be able to come back to it and engage. So I had a very similar experience. Like I worked for probably maybe 10 years and then got really engaged in student affairs and assessment with Sal and going to some conferences, and it kind of like clicked. It's like one of those things where like it's the right timing for you to hear it. Like some stuff with our students that sometimes it's when it's presented and where you are in your professional journey where it can really connect. So thanks for sharing that, Amy.
I would just say the other reality too, getting to your point, Amy, of are we actually doing this, is yeah, I think just about every grad prep program for student affairs or higher ed has some form of an assessment class. But I'll tell you what else is also a truth for many institutions. They don't do good assessment. So even if you took a class and you were reading a textbook and they were promoting certain practices, if you turned around and asked like, great, so yeah, you're the director of Res Life, like what are your learning outcomes? What is this? What is that? Like, they might not be able to tell you. So I think that's another thing too, where, and we've gotten great feedback from past course participants as well, of like, it's that they've really appreciated this course being taught by assessment practitioners and people who have lived in the work and can give, you know, example after example after example of application. Because yeah, while grad school can give you the text, you're also getting that within the context of that institution, which who knows what their assessment culture is like. Thanks. Looks like James might be on deck.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. You shared some of the things that I was going to share. I just wanted to say that I appreciated the timely feedback from you all as we progressed through the course. So it wasn't as if you got too far ahead. You know, the feedback was always timely. And even if in one case where I submitted, you know, something a week, you know, we had gone into module 6, I had submitted something for 5, and Joe, you followed up. So I just wanted to say that to me, that helps progress through the class too, as you're getting feedback from those who know this stuff very well and live it every day.
Thanks, James.
I'm going to jump into with, I also appreciate, I don't know how you guys grade everything so quickly. So, because I know you guys have a lot to do. One thing that I really, really appreciated was module 7 with the culture of assessment. And it made me realize, because I am newer to assessment, that it's okay to actually go to others for help, because it's not putting it on them. It's helping to build that culture and increasing the communication. And this was even reinforced. I just was at a program review this morning, and the current division chair was talking about her predecessor and how she did everything to try to not put the burden on her faculty members. But then she was also like, it was difficult because she did everything and didn't get input from faculty and that type of thing. So I appreciate that culture of assessment. Really liked that module. The one thing I'm still kind of left struggling with is almost like the nitty gritty of how to actually manage all of we have so much data that we have. We have course learning outcomes, we have program learning outcomes, we have all of our different, you know, like student life has their outcomes and they all report them to now my office. So how to actually manage all of those massive amounts of data and these outcomes here, and this is measured here, and we have this timeline here. So any input on that, even just from other students in the course, would be fantastic.
I saw on the assess listserv today, which is more geared towards assessment on the academic side. But as you know, as we've seen, like there's a lot of good overlap between good assessment work and concepts. There was a session there that just happened, I think late last week, around exactly what you're talking about, Christine. Folks sharing sort of their systems that they've developed to sort of manage that flow of the course level to the program level to the institutional level. Yeah, homegrown assessment systems. So I don't know if you're on that listserv, but and I wasn't able to attend, but I'm hoping to get the recording because I think that is a big question, right? Once you have everyone going and everyone's doing this work, if you're the person that has to synthesize it and make sense of it, it's a lot.
Which listserv is this that you just mentioned?
It's called the Assess listserv. Greg and Joe, do you remember who owns it? Who's in charge of it?
AALHE and the University of Kentucky. I'll put a
Yes.
link in the.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Christine, that's some great feedback too of if we can get that recorded, maybe we post that next year for that course too, for module 6. But I think that module 6 we can maybe build out some ideas around just resources, and some meat about how do you take all these data. Data's everywhere. Data are everywhere. How do we take all the data everywhere to implement and integrate and also chew the meat, spit out the bones kind of thing, right? Get what's important out of it. Sorry if you're vegan, I use a non-vegan reference.
Well, I did warn Greg, some of the feedback we've gotten historically, and I know Greg certainly added a lot more examples and hands-on stuff, but similar to you, Christine, we've gotten feedback in the past of people saying, they want a lot more on the nitty-gritty, like analysis and the data housing and the data collection, so what do we do when we have all this data, or where do we put it? And so it's much like the module 5 piece, it can be a tall order because it's like, yeah, there are entire PhD programs on measurement and statistics, and there's entire scopes of work where people just wrangle data and figure out where to store it.
I took an entire semester-long course on just data called data management. That was just how do you manage, clean, store, catalog, prioritize data. It is a lot. There's a lot. But we can get better at it, right? This is really important, and that point's really important. So I don't want to minimize that. I think there's ways in that module 6 that maybe we can prioritize it. And I'm glad to hear that this year was really about learning, teaching, learning it a little bit. And next year, I think kind of adding some new things to it will be in order. Good feedback. I think Jeanette has something.
Yeah, Jeanette, go for it.
A few folks from our college, including our one assessment person, took the class together, which was really nice. I think we ended up talking through some of the discussion questions together, and then sometimes forgetting to follow up in the discussion and making a post about it. For me, I know I had some user error challenges around when to post to the discussion fully versus when to go off to my subgroup based on my college size. Sometimes that wasn't clear to me in navigating Canvas. And sometimes it didn't always show me that there were multiple discussion prompts in my subgroup. And so sometimes I got a little confused, but I think that was more user error than anything else. And I really appreciated the resources. I think several of us made that comment in a recent discussion, that it's just so valuable to see so many articles and links and PDFs on things that you might have remembered or that were kind of fuzzy, but you don't remember where to go to find them. So it was really helpful to now have access to this library of resources.
Thanks, Jeanette. And yeah, I mean, that's why I tell people it's why we leave registration open until the end of week 7, is because I tell people, if you are at all interested in assessment, if you at all could use some new resources, sign up. Because even if you can't take the course, you're going to then just have access to this treasure trove of information and resources and potential insights from thousands of people taking the course. So I'm glad that folks really appreciate that, because it also just backs up when when we make those recommendations to others. Okay, let me quick transition. We just have a few more like wrap up reminder slides, and then we can always use the last few minutes for additional comments, feedback, suggestions from folks. But let me throw the slides back up. Okay. All right. So this is just a callback to module 1. We had an optional course connections form on module 1 discussion board. You can find the link to it and fill it out, and then you have access to then what people put in there, so you can contact other people that were in the course, and you can search and use the information by functional area. And so we encourage people to do that. We also have within APHIS Academy a Student Affairs Assessment Leaders Hub, which compiles recordings of related webinars, some additional resources, some blogs written by us. You can write your own blogs and tie them and connect them to this resource within APHIS Academy. As a reminder, APHIS Academy is free to join. You don't have to have any kind of membership or anything. And we have a group within APHIS Academy that is a space that you can stay engaged as course participants, because once the course ends, like the discussion board shut down, you can still see the content, but you can't keep adding to it. So we hope the group space in APHIS Academy could be a place for people to stay in touch with one another and stay engaging. So yeah, prepare any last minute questions. As a reminder, the course is accessible after April 3rd. April 3rd is when officially the course, that evening the course will end. But don't worry, your access to the course will remain. People who took the course in its very first run in 2017 still have access to that course shell. So you all will still have access to the course even after April 3rd. We don't exactly know when the course will be offered again, because it's always a bit of a negotiation between us, Canvas, and our partners. But for the past 6 years, we've offered it in the kind of winter time frame at the beginning of the year, so late January, early February. I don't necessarily anticipate that changing unless something changes with the instructors or with our partners. But we've carved out that spot for the past 5 years consistently, so it'll likely happen then again. But we always post our information on Sal's website for the open course, and I post about it obnoxiously when we know the information, when registration's open. So if you at all have a lifeline to me or are connected to me with any social media, then I can be your news source. And I alluded to this before in terms of the course ending, as well as that I'll double check grades and make sure everyone gets badges. Thank you to our partners, Student Affairs Assessment Leaders, which also has a free listserv if folks want to stay tuned in the Student Affairs Assessment conversation. And APHIS is the owner and operator of many things, but including APHIS Academy. And we have some resources for you all. Towards our site, the course site, and the hub within APHIS Academy. And here's our contact info. So with the last few, so that's all we had in terms of slides, and I just want to make sure and run through that. But if there's any remaining questions or feedback folks have, fire away.
We love talking about this, so feel free to connect, even after April. We're around doing some conferences and other stuff. I'm planning to go to the NASPA summer one that has an assessment. It's kind of a conglomeration of a couple conferences, but there's an assessment part to that. So if you're there, we'll have to connect and nerd out.
And I'll say huge kudos, congrats, and appreciation to Megan and Greg. The participants may not know it, but this was their first run through as instructors for the course. And I can say it's, you know, they certainly breathed some much needed life into the course and added some fresh new perspectives, and can't thank them enough for the work they did as part of it. And it sounds like you all appreciated their engagement and content too.
Well, we
Thanks,
have
Megan.
a great leader, Joe. So thank you for bringing us in. And I don't know how Joe grades all that with having a full-time job and a family. So thanks, Joe, for creating this back in the day when it started and continuing to offer it. It's really, really pretty amazing.
Yeah, we might have cracked. I need to check with these enrollment numbers, but we might have cracked 10,000 participants over the life of the course. I'll have to run the numbers. But it's pretty wild to think about it that way.
Yeah, happy to be 1/10 of that. Thank you so much, Joe. It's been great.
Well, thank you all for coming. We'll hang on here for the last few minutes in case anyone has any remaining questions. Otherwise, let you all out a little early and get on to your next meetings and enjoy the rest of your afternoon or late morning, depending on where you are.